This video, we're going to talk about job interviews, right? Typically, there's a statistic out there that you have 8 minutes to impress in a job interview. And if not, your job interviews are not going to go well. And within the first 8 minutes, the person interviewing you can figure out if they like you or not, if you should get the job or not. And if not, you'll just be kind of rejected, right? Which is kind of interesting because, there's many rounds of interviews, hours and hours of interviews. When I was interviewing for Goldman Sachs, I went through 9 rounds of interviews, or over 5 hours collectively, about half an hour each with people. And it really does get kind of tedious when you're going through all these job interviews. But if they can figure out, typically they do figure out very early on whether they like you or not, if they want to hire you or not. Everything else is reconfirming that process. It can be quite difficult. But in this particular video, we're going to get 2 different perspectives. The perspective of myself, of course, but also the perspective of 2 different individuals. Rich, who's worked at Boston Consulting Group, Google, and then we've got, and he doesn't work there now, just to be clear, and also we have the perspective of someone who's gone and faced many job interviews, someone called Truth Tiger, and this video went kind of viral with 76,000 views about how job interviews feel like a humiliation ritual. So let's listen to Rich's perspective here.
It's up to that connection in the interview that you need to make with the person. And if you don't, have you ever met somebody and they just rub you the wrong way? Well, when that happens in an interview, you're done. Like that, it's very difficult to recover from that. You're like, oh, this guy's a bozo. Not interested. So think about it. Think about how you connect with people in that 8 minutes, right? And part of that is screening for if they fit in the environment, right? Part of that is about are they going to fit on my team? Are they going to fit here? And is this somebody I want to work with? And, in consulting, it was always the airport test, right? If you got delayed at an airport for 5 hours, would you want to sit next to this guy and talk to him? Yeah, that's a real thing. Because, consultants, you travel a lot, and that actually happens. You get stuck in airports, rarely, but it happens. So that 8 minutes is really critical. On the interviewer side, if you are interviewing people, same thing. You just recognize that you're making that decision in 8 minutes. And you can argue with me, oh, no, I wait 30 minutes and then I make a decision based on the overwhelming evidence, blah, 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 blah. Okay, think about it. Think about when you actually make that hiring decision. And when you get that warm fuzzy, like, oh, this guy's great, right? It's almost always in that first 8 minutes. And then the rest is like, oh, tell me about this, tell me about that. Yes, they can lose it in the minute 26 or something if they say something outrageous or whatever, right? They start complaining about their old company and they're a bunch of jerks or say something racist or whatever. Yes, you can bomb the whole thing. But that hiring decision is usually clamped up within that 8 minutes.
So before we move on, let's consider what he's saying here, right? Many people, they do have technical skills, but they don't have the personality style required for a lot of these job interviews, right? And it's kind of common in job interviews. I remember, being at a job interview for a major securities broker, and he was asking me a bunch of technical questions, which I answered given I had a lot of experience at that point. And then he asked me what would I do with the future of my career after 3 years, and I'd seen enough in the industry at that point, how unstable it is. I didn't say all these things, but it's very difficult, honestly, to predict where you'd be in 3 years, because you could be at a company doing well, then there's mass layoffs. You could be going in a particular direction, maybe focused on, for example, foreign exchange trading. Then there's a drop in demand for foreign exchange traders, for example. Then you have to switch to another area like credit trading, corporate bond trading, whatever that would be. So I gave a generic answer where it's kind of like, yeah, I want to continue to stay in this area and develop a skill level, and perhaps after 3 years or so, be in a managerial role of overlooking other employees in this level, or broaden my skill knowledge beyond, say, foreign exchange to cover commodities and other areas, and developed more of a broader skill set there. And I could tell he didn't react quite well, but then I wasn't sure why. And then I spoke to the recruiter after the interview a few weeks later, and I said, what actually happened there? Because I had all the relevant skills and was doing the exact same thing at another company that I'd already done. And he said, oh, he felt like you came across a bit arrogant, that you would just be put in a management position in the future. And I said, no, he asked me a question where I'd be 3 years from now, right? And I was trying to explain where I think that could be. But this is what I mean. It's kind of very common for the people interviewing you just to get uncomfortable or feel uncomfortable over a small little comment. And this is what can matter, right? Interviewers, they can get the ick. And ICK, I'm sure you've seen the meme ICK ick, typically where a woman would say she was on a date with a guy and she got the ick, which means that there's some slight thing that put her off and she just completely rejected the guy. So maybe it was just he said one little thing, she felt uncomfortable, or maybe the certain thing with the clothing he was wearing. Maybe she didn't like one thing about the color of his jacket, and then she got the ick and wanted to reject the guy. The same thing happens with these interviewers because they have a lot of power, of course. You're going there asking them in a sense for a favor to hire you, right? And this is the thing, you got to be careful about this. It could be one small statement that's slightly politically incorrect, or you laugh at something and they think that's inappropriate, not taking it seriously, or it's small things like having a low-class hobby or interest, right? For example, I wouldn't bring it up all the time at work, but if people mention what TV show I might have watched, sometimes I watch WWE, which is pro wrestling, and that's considered like a low-class interest, which I was kind of aware of, but I don't want to keep putting on characters, right, and pretending to be something I'm not. So I just mentioned it, but I could tell they really didn't like it. They thought it was beneath them, which is fine. But other people in the office, more senior than me, that watch South Park or have interests like that, which I just think is low class. But I don't make a big deal about it. I'm not really judging you on your personal interests. But these type of things can really stand out to them. If you're not a diehard supporter of DEI or BLM or things like that, they might judge you for that. And this is the thing, every little slight comment or slight even behavioral adjustment that doesn't align with them or the company, they can really judge you for it. That's why so much of it is about putting on an act. And particularly you should think about who's interviewing you, what their personality type is, rather than necessarily like demonstrating yourself the best candidate for the role. So some people are more emotional, some interviewers are more emotional. If you're interviewed by what I coined sensitive Susie, like a very soft type of person who might be looking to cancel you if you don't have the same opinions as them, so you might want to parrot and mimic their body language and their opinions and just show you're very supportive and agree of them if you're dealing with these emotional types in interviews. So you have to be careful with that, right? Many times, there's the phrase that the modern workplace is like daycare for adults. You're dealing with many, people who behave like children, over emotional, looking for attention, approval, validation, and popularity. So you're dealing with a lot of these adult babies who are interviewing you, and you have to deal with a difficult personality type. So that's quite interesting. Let's get the perspective of Truth Tiger now.
Then, once you just master their stupid games, their stupid twisted up stuff, then it's like you're good. Then you'll get the job, and it makes no difference. You just turn on the fake charm. Oh, wow, so awesome. I can do anything. I can conquer the world for you, whatever. Oh, really? Wow, we could really use this over here. And, he seems so confident. And, it's like you just have to do that. And I remember talking to a guy who does interviews, and he was like, man, that guy, he seems so much different during his interview. It's like, yeah, that's because that's what he has to do. The guy wants a job. He has to act different in the interview process. That's part of it. And it's just so fake and disgenuine. And if I ever owned a company, I would not follow that line of doing things. It's a stupid way of doing things. It doesn't make sense. I'd want to see them do the job, see how they do it, see if they're good, whatever. If they do the job well, if they seem like they're a decent person, they're not going to freaking steal cash out of the register, they're going to show up on time, they're going to, do the work they got to do, cool. Good enough, we'll do it, But if not good enough, we're not going to do it. But it's just not that simple. And I don't know, I feel like also it's like they're like, I said this before, but it's like, we want the superstar barista, and we want a superstar, whatever, a superstar factory worker, or whatever. It's like, no, you're not a superstar if you're working at a factory or being a barista, and they know that. It's your job. You go in there, you do the job. It's not this big fancy, have the most all-star employees. Like, no, you don't. Nowhere does. No people are not coming here to be all-stars. They're just coming here to do their job, get their money, go home. Let's be honest. Like, really. This whole freaking thing they have of I don't know, it's like the job is like a religion or something, and they're so into it. I don't even know what they want, but the whole thing is just weird. They want you to be fake. They don't want the real you. They want a fake projection. They want you to project a narcissistic mask. They do. They love the narcissistic mask, and it's why a lot of narcissists move up in the corporate world.
So he's making some good points here, right, about how these dynamics particularly work, right? And, doing like a bit of an impression about normies and NPCs. It's kind of funny how they work, right? And this is the thing. It makes no sense to be above average in the workplace beyond things that would kind of be required for the role. Like being an all-star employee, it doesn't work anymore, especially now that absolutely everyone can see how fake the work environment is, particularly if they've been working from home, particularly because the wages are not keeping up with inflation now more so than ever, and they weren't keeping up with inflation before 2020 anyway, right? And there's no decent path to home ownership or having families, and especially men are dropping out as per some of my recent videos. And many people realize that being average, at least in the social dynamic or the workplace dynamic, can have its advantages, right? There's no point of going above and beyond. People are going to exploit you. The company you're working for could exploit you. Hard work doesn't necessarily pay off in a lot of these corporate environments, and that's why being an interview, being more fake is more important than being more technically skilled. So most people won't make it with their job, especially now. When I say make it, I mean financial freedom and things like that. We're seeing even middle and senior middle management getting fired, right? So many people who think, I'm going to climb the corporate ladder, then they're still on very unstable, shaky ground, even if they're high up on that ladder. Now, another point he makes here is about religion and the culture of workism, right? People create, I don't know if you've heard the term workism, ISM. It's the same thing with, communism, socialism. It's basically when people are treating work as a cult, right? They're super into it. It's their complete life meaning, like a communist or a socialist, things like that. And their entire identity is work. And some people do this, especially now because people don't have a lot of free time. They're working a lot, maybe spending some time on social media, kind of burnt out, and they don't really do much apart from work, and maybe spend a bit of time with friends or consuming Netflix or food delivery services or whatever that would be, different subscription services. But they don't have a lot of free time, so their entire identity is their job title, basically. They're overcommitting to the company, and they want that from you or at least pretending to play that role in a lot of these job interviews. They want a fake persona, even if they tell you, you can bring your whole self to work, you can bring your real self to work, which is another one of those corporate lies, right? Like, one team, one dream, or this company's like a family, this team is like a family. These are all fake doublespeak words, phrases, right? And that key one there, bringing yourself to work or bringing your whole self to work, is a big lie in that. And you'll notice that in job interviews with how fake you'd have to be just to survive, to effectively do well in some of these places. So let's go back to Rich and see what he has to say about this particular dynamic.
I would sometimes, if I knew there's no way I'm hiring this person, I would cut the interview short. There's nothing you're going to say after that first 8 minutes that it was so bad that's going to convince me that you're an amazing person to join this team. Nope. Done. 20 minutes, 15 minutes. Hey, yeah, good. Thanks for coming. Bye. And I've interviewed, I don't know, hundreds of people, many people. and if you first step on this is to start recognizing it. This could step out of your body a little bit, and as you're in an interview, on either side, see how that goes, that first 8 minutes.
Now he's focusing, it's just a short clip there, on terms of following the first 8 minutes, where in the first 8 minutes of an interview, they can figure out whether they want to hire you, and you can figure out if you want to work there, right? Many HR seminars and a lot of this corporate official training you have to do, they give you terrible time wasting advice, right? And that's why if you just follow your instincts in business, if you're self-employed, in your personal life, in job interviews, you can kind of figure out if something's going to work or not, if it's a waste of your time or not, how people really work. And that's what I mean, follow your instincts rather than the official corporate narrative, whatever that would be. And I think a lot of, how can I put it as nice as I can, right? So people who are NPCs, normies, weaker, more submissive types, or people who just go along with whatever the mainstream narrative would be. These are people who can't think for themselves. There's a reason why there's a term NPC, people who can't think for themselves typically. Those are the people who follow the corporate opinions, the expert opinions, and they're proven wrong time and time again because they're going along with a narrative that is typically a deliberate lie. And that's what I mean by you should understand how the corporate game works, but not play by the rules. And don't be a typical IYI, intellectually an idiot, someone who's highly educated but still dumb, doesn't have common sense. And these midwit types you have to deal with. This is how you've kind of got to play along with a character in the office, but not being the idiot falling for the same lies that they do. Trusting your instincts and not dumb corporate rules. For example, when I mentioned doing like 9 interviews to get a job at Goldman Sachs or some of these other companies, I've interviewed hedge funds, private equity firms. It's kind of like it should be, in a sense, dependent on your instincts. You should be able to figure it out. And if these companies are so highly valued and highly respectable, they shouldn't necessarily need 9 interviews, 5 hours or more of interviews. Hours and hours of interviews to figure out if someone's good for the role. They should be able to figure it out within, I would say, 1 to 2 rounds of interviews. And they can maybe have a couple of people interviewing in the first round. And then if they think you're good, second round, they can figure it out then. But they really have these long drawn out processes, right? Which are a bit ridiculous. And if you're dealing with these difficult types of job interviews, it's something I include in my coaching program. Link in description if you want to speak with me directly. I'd be happy to help. I help map your career strategy straight to freedom, dealing with office politics, job interviews, promotions, dealing with layoffs too. So link in description if you want to speak with me directly. But let's get back to this, right? We're going to have a very interesting clip here in terms of how to deal with some of these dynamics. And I think this is quite a funny clip, so stay tuned for it.
And it's why a lot of like CEOs and stuff are statistically much more likely to be narcissists, psychopaths, sociopaths, whatever. It's a messed up system, and it does not come from a good place. And the people who set it up, not sure who they were, but certain well-connected people set this up probably 100 or 200 years ago. Those people did not have good intentions and were greedy and weird and fake, and the whole thing is just so fake and weird. It doesn't have to be that way. You got to go to work and do some stuff you don't want to do, and whatever, give yourself a headache thinking too much, or hurt your back lifting stuff, or whatever. You got to like go there and be uncomfortable. So why like make it worse? And I think I figured it out. Jobs kind of suck. All jobs suck, but like they want to make you get on your knees and beg for it. They want to make you freaking be like, please give me this job. Please give me this crappy job. Please, I'm begging you. I'm going to bow down and kiss your feet. Please. They want that. They want to just like diminish you and take away your agency and your sense of who you are. And it's like, if you ask anybody, I've even talked to like high up corporate executives. They don't like their jobs. Nobody does. It's not fun. It's not enjoyable. And this whole like, whatever, these whole airs people put on about, I don't know, I'm the king corporate, the best employee here. I don't even know, but people put on these airs to act like they like the company or like the job or whatever. And the truth is, when you talk to most people, really, they don't like their job. They don't like their company. And this is like, maybe the people who own the company like it. I don't know, but it seems like this really goes from like top to bottom, where like everybody hates this crap, but we all have to do it and put up with it.
So he's made some good points here, right? And I just want to focus on it in a bit of detail. See, the reason why I've been so quite anti-corporate brainwashing or corporate culture is because it trains you, or they're trying to train you to behave like a sheep, while management or the people who manage the company at very senior levels, the wolves. They're like wolves. They can be ruthless, psychopathic. They can be blunt. We saw in that earlier clip in one of my earlier videos about JP Morgan, and the boss shouting and swearing about how he doesn't agree with work from home and things like that, or how inefficient the company is. He's allowed to behave like a wolf or like an aggressive man, but every other man has to be domesticated or neutered or effeminate and not inoffensive, because they want you to behave like a sheep while they can be the wolves and take advantage of you, right? They want you to be weak. They can behave like predators, but you have to behave like prey, right? So they want to break your self-esteem and identity, like he's covering here. See, the thing is, many people in management roles, they might not be as senior as like the board of directors or the CEO, but they know they're massively overpaid for their work they're doing, right? They're just dealing with a lot of office politics and delegating a lot of the work to maybe people like you or more junior levels. And they're playing a careful social game to keep their job. They don't really have like real solid skills in that sense. It's more so just office politics. That's the key skill in a lot of these managerial roles, right? And if you're lower than them, you're kind of getting screwed in dealing with these difficult dynamics. So it's worthwhile being aware in job interviews, like what is the power dynamic going on there, right? And not letting them exploit you. And if you do think it's not going so well and the job interview's a waste of time, I wouldn't suggest you walk out, but you can kind of keep it short as best as you can until you can leave, right? So really figure out the power dynamic. And if it feels quite toxic, then maybe you should think about perhaps not working for the company and continuing to interview for other companies.
Got to a point where I realized, like, if the interview goes badly, it's not the job for me. I can prepare, I can be confident, I what I can do well and what I can't. If the interview doesn't go well, okay, it's not the job for me. It's not the job for you. That's okay. It might freak you out because, you need a job and all of that, but like, I don't know, you don't want to get somebody else's dream job. You want to get your dream job. So yes, you got to prepare for it. You got to get, ready and so on. But hopefully you have been competent in your work and you know what you're talking about and you have confidence that you can do the job that you're interviewing for. And if you find that you're bombing interview after interview, maybe you should change the jobs that you're applying for to something that you can actually, that actually fits you.
And I just want to finish on that. Like, I think he's making some good points here, but it's easier to said than done. Many people don't necessarily want the job, but they need a job, right? So they're dealing with many layoffs, particularly now in the economy. And there's not necessarily a dream job, right? They're just easy jobs so you may fit in versus jobs you don't fit in, right? And it's unlike school or your education where hard work can pay off, right? You can study hard and get good grades, but in a work environment, it's not about work hard and get paid well. It doesn't work like that. It's more of a social game in these interviews too, right? So much about jobs and careers is kind of out of your control. It's based on favoritism, networking, and nepotism and things like that. So let's look at some of the comments and what people are saying, right? Here we've got someone saying, your feelings resonate with other people. If you're nervous, it makes other people feel uncomfortable. The same goes with happiness and calmness, etc. So it's better to approach the job interview in a good mood, and a way of doing that is being detached and kind of going along with the flow. Someone else called Zion Foreman says, I had an interview last week. It lasted less than 2 minutes. I crashed and burned like a proverbial Led Zeppelin, and I wasn't upset about it at all. But you're right, it's about the overall package an individual brings to the table. Their disposition, their character, their aura. All hiring is biased, discriminatory, and exclusionary by definition, right? That's what it means. Like the vibe you're bringing to some of these environments is really how you'd be judged. Aaron RS is saying, I am a web developer with an online portfolio. When I get to interviews, nobody's aware of anything I've posted on my portfolio. Typically, HR pulls people from their desk to interview me. Usually, they have not read my resume, and frankly, they are usually rather put off that they were pulled away from their work to interview me. IT departments have outsourced their recruitment and could care less about who gets hired. I'm better off finding my own clients as a self-employed person, right? That's something I'd encourage you to consider. If your job interviews aren't going well, what parts of self-employment are there for you, or how can you plan ahead for that over the next few years as the job market continues to get worse? Now, what's interesting here is, at least in the tech industry, you can demonstrate your skills through an online portfolio, unlike maybe finance, where a lot of the work you're doing is sensitive and relevant to the company. You can't really have an online portfolio of the finance work you've done, but you can do a bit of that through your tech skills if you're a web developer. And the fact that HR don't know what they're doing is a very common theme, and I covered it in an earlier video recently on this similar topic about interviews. You just need to get used to HR being kind of clueless, and that's why they don't pick the best candidates often for job interviews. And something you have to be aware of in a lot of these job interviews is that the people interviewing you, they are of course at work and they've got busy work days, so they might be pulled away to interview you. They might not actually like you or feel under pressure to get their work done, and they just feel like, oh, I have to interview this candidate. I have no idea who he is. They might have just seen your resume 5 minutes before they get a chance to speak with you. So it's something to just be aware of what's actually going on here in terms of what type of dynamic are you dealing with. So if someone's interviewing you and they're stressed out about their work day, just try and keep it as quick as possible. I'm not saying you should rush your own job interview, but get to the point quite quickly rather than having a slow, tedious interview. Just bear in mind they're dealing with a lot of pressure too for their own job. And now we've got someone here who says, I've been to 3 interviews on technical roles. I nailed all the technical part of the interviews and competency questions, but I still don't get any job offers. It looks like they simply don't like me, or culturally I'm just not a good fit. So that's a common theme many people are dealing with. And if you're struggling with some of these interviews, I've dealt with this. getting top jobs at Goldman and Morgan Stanley and other companies, hedge funds, private equity firms, asset management, and things like that. And I've dealt with a lot of these corporate environments, and that's why I offer career coaching to kind of help you mapping your path to freedom, dealing with office politics, dealing with layoffs, which is kind of a common theme now with some of my candidates and people I've been coaching, and how to build a long-term financial security plan. So if you're caught up in a series of bad interviews, at least that doesn't impact you and your sense of self-worth, and you develop some financial stability for yourself. Link in description if you want to speak with me directly. And let me know in the comments how you're finding job interviews or how you found job interviews and the process in general. I definitely think it can be improved. 2 recommended videos on the screen right now, and I'll see you next time.